whose voters are going to show up on November 6th? Some interesting data that Joe Rago, our editorial board member, is here to tell us about. I guess so far, not looking good for the president.
No, I mean, you sort of hear about this vaunted grassroots machine. You know, it's going to turn out all the young people. They're all going to come out of the woodwork.
They've been spending a lot on that machine.
They've
bought an expensive machine. How's the machine working?
But you know, as our Kim Strassel reported in a piece today, she looked at the key toss-up states. You know, this is Florida, Iowa, North Carolina, Colorado, Nevada, and Republicans are actually doing a lot better. They have a lot more voter registration advantage. So I think one thing about this year is that Republicans are so kind of ginned up over, you know,
beating Obama. He brings out the conservative base.
They really want to win, and they're turning out in droves. So it's sort of Obama is just plowing money into these drives, and it's kind of yielding diminishing returns. Whereas Republicans haven't quite spent as much, so they're not doing as well by the conventional metrics. But if you look at the actual results, they're actually doing quite well.
We have two issues here. The first is voter registration, getting people registered, and then secondarily, can you get them to show up once you've registered them? We've been talking about the registration numbers, as you said, really dramatic in some of these states. Iowa, for example, 08 was a fairly significant Democratic registration advantage. Now it's a Republican advantage. You've seen that other places like Colorado. Then you get to this question of, okay, we've seen registrations and Republicans seem to have an edge there. Enthusiasm. I think we've got a graphic we can put up on how enthusiastic is basically a question to voters. How enthusiastic are you? USA Today Gallup question, and 08 to 2012, really striking turnaround.
Right, definitely. Essentially, just a mirror flip. It's totally inverse. So, look, Republicans are still going to have a lot of trouble this year. You know, this is really looking like a down to the wire election, but they do have a lot of advantages behind them, kind of the tailwinds.
Well, you look at all of these swing states. You basically have almost every battleground state, if not within the margin of error, you're talking about 5 points or less. The president basically ahead in almost all of them, but under 50% in almost all of them, which is normally a danger sign for a well-known incumbent. So you get to things like voter registration, you get to things like turnout, and I guess you'd have to say at this point, if you're saying who has the better machine to get people to the polls, seems to be pretty clear.
It's definitely a toss-up. You're definitely not gonna see anything like 2008, where it was just kind of this huge wave. You know, the exhaustion of the late Bush years. You know, get me back to Texas. You know, John McCain suspending his campaign and sort of looking around and going, oh God, I don't know what to do. And Obama just sort of, he kind of captured the moment. I don't think you're going to have the same thing this year, and that's really going to affect the dynamics in a lot of these swing states.
I think this is a great point. For all his faults, Mitt Romney is a competitor. I don't think he's going to mail it in like perhaps the 08 George Bush or self-destruct in the way of a McCain calling the meeting in Washington about financial reform and then having nothing to say. So it does come down to turnout. And I would say, you know, based on the data we're seeing, probably a Republican edge at this point. Joe, thanks for joining us.
James.